Hello, you're listening to the HatchetJob.com Gaming Netcast Awards for 2012, aka the Insert Category Awards. Now, I did say 2012, although we recorded this show on the 19th of January 2014. If you haven't listened to us, this is probably going to be very confusing, so bear with me as I explain things. Right. Our award show comes out a year later than everybody else, and we don't have any fixed categories, so we're not going to put a tick in the box for the best FPS or the best RPG. The reason we do this is that the reason I like a game and the things you like about a game might be completely different. They are dependent on us as people and our experiences, okay? Trying to say you should fit into our way of doing things is actually a bit presumptuous, and it doesn't make any sense, especially since games are so complex these days. Why are we doing things a year late? Well, if you think about it, most Game of the Year award shows happen at the end of the year, maybe just a week or 2 weeks after the big titles have been released. So how are you supposed to feel about them? Let's do an award show that gives you plenty of time to get used to a game, and crucially to get used to the DLC, because of course, as we know, these days games are not sold complete. You can spend £50 or £100 on a game, get the special edition, and it won't have all the DLC. So let's give people more time to think about stuff. Traditionally, we would go out and get people's opinions and awards and kind of read them out on the show. That was a bit difficult this year, but what we've done is we've had a 3-person discussion about 2012 titles that we've played or we've thought about. And because we've all kind of had personal experience of these things, it's a bit more in depth than normal, but hopefully it's still as funny, but maybe not. But anyway, that's the premise. Let's get on with the show, and I hope you enjoy it. So Sim, you're going to start us off with a cell shading award.
I am. The Borderlands Award for cell shading and for services to comic books, I've awarded to The Darkness 2. I played and liked the first Darkness game. It wasn't cell shaded. There's some controversy about its ending and whether you take control of it and yada yada.
Yeah.
But because I'd enjoyed the first game so much, it tells a pretty decent story. It's well acted. I was looking forward to the second one, and I had a bit of a shock at first when the graphical style threw me, I suppose, because it was all very Borderlands. And now that's not a bad thing. Borderlands cuts down on detail in order to enable faster frame rates and more stuff to appear on the screen. But it was a little bit jarring at the beginning of The Darkness 2 until you remember that it's based on a comic book.
Yeah.
And then the styling's all made a kind of sense, because it does feel like you're playing in a comic book universe.
Yeah. Old School Soviet, who is one of the few people that responded when we put our call out for awards, said, "The game most likely to induce entitlement complaints about random loot is Borderlands 2.
I'm not sure if Borderlands 2 really was that the most entitled kind of ranting about loot that year. Maybe it was. It did seem a lot harder to find decent items in Borderlands 2 than in the game before.
Well, that might also be because they changed it, didn't they? So there was more variation between weapons. So maybe there's kind of a curve somewhere where you can have loads of variation between weapons, but that means that you're going to have more average stuff. And if you have less variation, less different components, you're going to get higher quality weapons overall. You like restaurants where one guy specializes in doing one thing for 30 years, that dish he does is going to be really, really good. But as soon as you start adding different things to the menu, the overall quality might go down.
Sure. I guess they had a gazillion guns, didn't they?
Yeah, I think that was the technical marketing term. And Lupus, having bathed himself and anointed himself with oil, is now ready to unleash his award upon the world.
Oh, God. Best game to feature child murder goes to Crusader Kings 2.
I mean, there were probably quite a few contenders in 2012.
I don't know. There's not many games where you can actually kill.
No, there aren't. You're
children.
Absolutely right. In fact, it's probably it's kind of a unique category.
Yeah.
But for my first award, the Wub Wub Award goes to Syndicate.
Wub.
Yeah.
That was a tightly contested category as well.
It was, wasn't
Borderlands 2.
I have like a verbatim entry as well. My Wub Wub award goes to Forza Horizon.
Yeah.
Ah, wow. Yeah, no, it was really hot for Wub Wub in 2012.
It's brilliant. It's like the musical equivalent of motorboating, isn't it?
There was that. There
That's
was
a
that other
great
game.
concept for something. Oh my god.
Ridge Racer, Ridge Racer Unbounded had Wub Wub as well, didn't it? I
Did
mean,
it?
there were
Everything.
a lot.
I really liked what that genre was doing, and then it became prevalent. It became the musical equivalent of zombies or World War II.
They joked about it in the Borderlands 2 advert, didn't they, with the gazillion guns? You know, the claptrap thing. They did all the kind of like more guns, more something else, more Wub Wub, and
Yes.
deliberately Skrillexed it up.
Yeah.
You know, Far Cry 3. There was a wow. You know, that's a big award. I don't know how you're going to choose now.
I don't know. What's your next award, Sim?
My next award is the worst use of an introduction to tell a story of an unspoken love between all the main game characters, and that goes to Binary Domain, which has a relationship system between all of the playable characters in your squad, and some of it seems vaguely inappropriate.
Right.
Especially when you bear in mind that you could shout into the microphone to give them commands. Although the overarching story isn't long enough for you to kind of pitch all these mixed views against each other in one playthrough, but yes, they despite all being specialist soldiers of mass murder and robot destruction, they for some reason didn't get along, a lot of the different factions. So whilst you were seducing the incredibly sensual lady who turns out to be a robot, you were you were upsetting your good buddy, the jolly British SAS kind of fellow who absolutely doesn't trust these people from China, you know, and all that sort of thing. So it was quite interesting, but I just really liked the game and wanted an excuse to mention it again.
I just imagining some alternate universe where an otaku, right, quote unquote, orders a robotic girlfriend, and then is horrified to find out it's a real woman.
We can't be that far away from that.
It should have been better than this award goes to Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
Yep.
That was such a wasted opportunity, it felt like.
Yeah,
that game.
I've actually got an award for that. Can I tell you my award?
Yeah.
It's the so I have to look down my list. The game that fucked Capcom. Street Fighter X Tekken.
Okay, that's a little bit more direct.
Yeah. So if you don't know about what happened in this game is Capcom said, we're taking these two major game franchises, right, huge, long history, putting them together, and everybody thought, holy shit, that's amazing. And then they said, and we're going to change it up a bit because we're going to allow you to customize how your character plays, where you can give them more strength or more defense, and everybody thought, holy shit, that sounds interesting. And then what Capcom said is, but we're going to sell the customization bit. And when you get the game and people start looking at the data, they're going to find out that there are loads and loads of characters on there that are playable, but you can't have, so you have to buy them. And we're going to watch our share price plummet and everybody become incredibly disgusted with us, which is basically what happened. And it fucked them. It fucked them for that financial year.
So I am obviously the fighting game novice of the outfit. Were the fighting mechanics any good? You know, because I kind of still am ignorant of frames and counters and all the other terminology, which I'm not blissfully ignorant about. It's just that I've never loved fighting games enough to be any good at them. Sorry. So were the mechanics any good in the game? And was that kind of overshadowed by all that, pay for stuff? Or was it also a shandy game?
It's not as refined feeling as, say, the Street Fighter was, and it's not as manic as some of the other like versus games were. So it was kind of this odd middle ground where it wasn't quite serious enough, but it wasn't quite crazy enough to kind of go for what it felt like it should have been. So I mean, it's a fun game to sit down and play with your friends on the couch.
Yeah, because it's four player as well. It's 4 player at the same time on the screen. Or swap in, swap out, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, you can tag in, or you can have 2-on-2, like 4 people on the screen at the same time, which is crazy.
Yeah,
but it's also slightly broken at times. It feels like so, but it's that's fun for novelty's sake. But it's not
it should have been a smash hit because it was a game that basically took the two main fighting game franchises, or the ones that most people would have heard of, allowed you to customize it, and allowed 4 people to sit down at the same time. It should have been fantastic for tournaments and competitions for people watching.
Yeah, it's one of those things that on paper it should have been fantastic, but even putting aside the pay stuff, there were all kinds of weird things about how you could, at least when the game first came out, you couldn't really easily save customization setups and stuff,
right?
To just apply across characters and stuff. So it's this isn't done, is it?
When they built it, they said this is going to be great for tournaments, but as Lupus said, they didn't put in the things that make running a tournament easy. If you have a custom character and all your characters have to be custom, and then you have one you prefer to play and one you might bring in against another player, in a tournament setting, you have to have quick access to that, because otherwise it slows down the stream and it makes the organisers annoyed, and that wasn't there.
Okay.
But talking about franchises, my award for the I don't care about the franchise because I've never played it, and anyway the artist gets to choose, goes to Syndicate.
Okay.
And this happens with Star Wars, and this happens with other things, where a creator makes a universe, or he makes a film and he makes a world, and then somebody changes it, and the fan base gets annoyed, right?
Sure.
So in this case, the people that like Syndicate wanted an isometric game or something like it. They didn't want a first-person shooter, which is a shame because it was a fantastic game, and since I hadn't played it before, I didn't really care.
A lot of the artwork shared some of the styles as well. It wasn't going to be a very basic isometric game. It wasn't perhaps stylistically the same as Syndicate Wars even, but it shared a lot of the same, trench coat stuff, and the gunplay was amazing. So despite the complaints about OMG, it's not a Syndicate game, I put it in my category of things that turned out to be pleasantly surprising.
So that was kind of the Fallout 3 award of destroyed the franchise.
Yeah.
What was Fallout 3 accused of destroying the franchise?
Well, yeah, because 1 and 2 are these highly revered PC games, aren't they? Which are essentially kind of 2D. Well, the original Fallout.
They were isometric.
Yeah,
that's right. And there was a great fan base, and it has a particularly, child murdering kind of humor. But Fallout 3 obviously has stylistic differences, and they kind of reimagined some of the enemies, I suppose. But it was still a really good game, and remains a really good game.
Most criminal to have on a low-res system, Xenoblade Chronicles.
Oh, yes.
Ooh.
This was a beautiful game that unfortunately came out on the Wii. So it was like looking at this beautiful rendered world through a screen door most of the time.
Yeah, I've actually spent a number of months looking for a copy of Xenoblade Chronicles because I still have my Wii. There's a confession. And the main reason I haven't got rid of my Wii actually is partly for when my nieces and nephews come round, but mostly because I'm determined to get a copy and play it.
So how much is it going for at the moment?
Since then, I've not been able to find it for less than about $45. And in a lot of cases, it seems like those aren't legitimate sellers anyway, and you probably have to spend original retail price on it.
But I mean, actually, I have an award for that, and the Please Don't Get Another Printing Award goes to Xenoblade Chronicles. Because when it was released, everybody said this game is amazing. And I thought, that sounds very interesting, this RPG, very deep Japanese game. I'll order it. And then everybody was saying, oh, you can't get any more stock. And I thought, great, even if I don't play this ever, I can sell it for a huge profit. And then the clamour for copies became so great that they started printing the fucking thing again.
Oh, right. Well, that's kind of more down to you not taking advantage of the market forces at just the right moment.
Yeah. That's
Don't take up stocks and share trading.
The best Bruce Lee simulator goes to Sleeping Dogs, and that's from Nelly Nell.
I've got best reuse of an abandoned Activision license for Sleeping Dogs, and also best use of a Bruce Lee outfit. So I'm with Nelly Nell here.
Another award I've got for that. Sorry, I'm hogging your limelight temporarily.
No, pile them on.
Our most popular video on YouTube award goes to Sleeping Dogs. because I was playing it. You can get all these different costumes for your guy to wear. So you can get, he looks like Ong Bak, for example, right? Or there's one that's like Bruce Lee's Game of Death costume. And I was playing it and I thought, I wonder if I record a fight of me playing with the Bruce Lee costume on, whether that would be popular on YouTube. And I watch these videos, so I don't feel too bad about doing it. Although really, it was a blatant, let me see if I can get lots of hits on YouTube with this video, which is a bit shit. And it worked. And I think it now has 88,000 views.
Wow, and they're all our listeners now, right?
Yeah. But 0.1% of those people have clicked on HatchetJob.com. And it's got some kind of peculiar responses, like Jorge Michel said, this guy is doing his best, but Bruce would have ended this in 2 minutes because no one can endure 2 kicks of Lee.
He's probably right.
Yeah.
Would that be the actual Bruce Lee in the game or the actual Bruce Lee playing Sleeping Dogs?
I think it's Bruce Lee playing Sleeping Dogs. That's very meta. This is a great quote from our Bruce Lee YouTube video. Pete Carr said, this generation and this kind of fight engine would finally do justice to a next-gen Bruce Lee game. If a decent writer was on board, we could finally get something amazing.
Okay, because that's what his films were best known for.
Yeah, and the dialogue.
Storyline.
Yeah, that touching sexual subtext of his fight with Chuck Norris.
I mean, it was pretty complicated. You know, man arrives at fight area.
Yeah.
Fights ensue. Slightly harder fights go on. Some male bonding.
Yeah, male bonding.
Another fight, and then a final fight with lots of people, and probably some bleeding and pain, and some more fighting. It's a complex thing to reproduce in a video game. I can see why it'd be tough.
Award for best twist goes to Fez.
Oh,
I haven't finished it.
I see what you did there.
It's awful.
Oh no, it's nice. No, it's nice.
It's good. It's good. I haven't played Fez yet. Is it worth getting?
You haven't played it?
No.
Really? Oh wow. Yeah.
You missed the XBLA sale when it was a couple of quid. I've got an award for it as well, the Best Publicity Award for the patching mostly, where they patched it and then unpatched it and then thought about repatching it and then couldn't be asked.
It's like a depression era child in his dungarees.
Yeah. Brilliant. I have the best game that was going to be a boxed retail release, but then wasn't, for I Am Alive, which I originally had the award for best fog.
Right. Okay.
It's also pretty foggy. And again, it's another game I just wanted to mention because it's really good, and it seemed to get overlooked because it was quite expensive and there was a deal of confusion about how and when it was going to be released.
So this is the game where you're a man in a post-apocalyptic survival scenario, isn't it?
That's right. Essentially, you never really find out really what the hell's going on because clearly it was going to be a much bigger game, and they cut the budget for it and released it as in the state it was in. But it was a decent game where you had really limited resources and had to wander around looking for your wife and daughter in a world where everyone lived in fear and deprivation.
It's set in IKEA, and you're just a lost husband.
Well. Yeah, I mean, I was going to draw some parallels to modern reality.
And then there are people scrambling for cheap batteries and meatballs.
Well, the meatballs would be your survival rations. And the skills, in the game require you to have a degree of stamina. So I guess kind of climbing up some of those 30 feet high sections in the warehouse would be a decent representation of that in IMO.
The award goes to Trials Evolution.
Oh, right. Was that 2012? Man.
Yeah.
God damn that game. And the leaderboards. And the ghosts of people on your friends list.
Oh, it was a fantastic game. But one of my favorite parts of that was just the random times your on-screen character would just sort of yell as he's flying through the air, like off huge jumps or something.
It was a hair metal game in that sense, wasn't it?
It's somewhat, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the multiplayer turned out to be something different than maybe what we expected. I mean, I guess having only played the game previous, we maybe imagined it was going to be that same sort of tight, complicated difficult kind of gameplay that the first game brought, but actually a lot of the multiplayer tracks weren't all that technical, were they? Although I guess, of course, you have the unlimited possibilities of the track editor.
Some of the ones I downloaded were incredibly tough.
Do they have were they multiplayer optioned? I mean, I didn't really play much of the multiplayer. I had a few games with randoms online, but I don't know why I didn't spend more time with that side of it.
The "You're looking a bit pale, why don't you lie down" award goes to Spelunky. Because at the time Spelunky came out, I infected somehow the middle finger on my right hand. And I went to the hospital, and the guy squeezed all the pus out of it like the last bit of a toothpaste in a tube.
What did he do with it?
And it wouldn't. I don't know what happened. But he was squeezing it. And they looked at my finger and they said, "Oh, we're going to have to take the nail off." And I thought, "Oh." And then he said, "You're looking a bit pale. Why don't you lie down?"
So did this stop you playing Spelunky?
It didn't, because I could. This is the thing. I could play Spelunky with one hand, and that actually got me thinking about how, in kind of terms of purity in mechanics, games that can be played with one finger or one hand are kind of interesting, because you're forced to think about how everything works really, really carefully.
Yes, I agree. I gave Spelunky an award also, the best randomly generated mood generator, because it really, in the most blinding traditions of old school gaming, takes you from the highs of triumph to the lows of failure in seconds, and sometimes vice versa.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you seen the Street Fighter, the Texas Street Fighter? That's sort of like a
Texas Street Fighter.
Well, a Street Fighter player that is from Texas. The particular one I'm thinking about is in a wheelchair and basically uses mostly his mouth to play.
So there are two kind of well-known one-handed fighting game players. One is called the One-Handed Terror. I think that's his name. And his left arm ends in, he describes it like a little cat's paw. So he doesn't have fingers as such, he kind of has little nubs. And so he uses his left arm to control the stick, and then he has normal control of the buttons. And the dude you're talking about is a young guy. He may not even be in a wheelchair, he may be on kind of like a motorized trolley. So he's lying down, and he places the controller under his chin and plays like that. And I think he plays Chun-Li.
Yeah.
Her moves, they don't require necessarily kind of motions to activate, like fireballs and quarter circles. So he's found that Chun-Li works best with how he plays.
Yeah.
What's your one, Lupus?
Okay, next up is the Everything is on Fire award. Goes to FTL. Because that game is just a horror simulator in space at times.
What a great game.
It's fantastic, yeah. Fortunes turn so fast in that game, though.
Is it?
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, I had an award. I think it was the only PC game of 2012 which ran on my computer. It is a game where you can be motoring along. It reminded me a little bit of Flotilla. Do you remember that game? Yeah, it was a PC game originally.
Like Homeworld.
Yeah, you had a limited number of turns in which to build up your fleet, fight other people. You were never quite sure what was going to come along, and FTL reminded me a lot of that, because you could never be sure what was coming next, right? I mean, you had an idea that the difficulty was going to progress, but you could suddenly be thrust into a nightmare, having just about got a load of fantastic crew members together. I've put the Peter Stringfellow Memorial Award. I should probably explain to Lupus that Peter Stringfellow is basically an old lecherous guy who runs a strip club.
I think what you're trying to say is a very lucky older man.
Sorry, an incredibly successful, rich and wealthy and litigious businessman.
No. I'm not saying
with lustrous blonde hair.
Peter Stringfellow is a 60-ish-year-old guy with bleached blonde hair. He has a mullet, basically, like a quiff and a mullet, who runs a famous strip club in the UK called Stringfellows. Now, I think what this really is about, Lupus, is that Simplicity has a problem with older people's sexuality.
What?
Right?
I am an older person.
Well, no, I mean older people like Stringfellow's age, because no open-minded, generous person would have a problem with an older man taking a younger lover.
Or a number of younger lovers.
And really, that's what your issue is with.
I just thought that Geralt, in The Witcher 2, has lustrous blonde hair, a wrinkly old face that looks like a prune, and a seemingly endless supply of nubile love conquest.
Okay,
so it seemed, it seemed a reasonable.
Yeah, but to be fair,
comparison.
I mean, I haven't played The Witcher 2 yet, but as far as I can tell, he's a character with really beautiful eyes, who's extremely strong and can do magic.
Oh, yeah, okay, and a great personality.
If you look at pickup artists who go to bars with packs of cards and make lighters disappear, whatever it is, if I go to a bar, kill a couple of bouncers, and then my eyes twinkle, I think I get some ladies.
Okay, but yeah, so for services to self-esteem for aging blonde gentlemen, I've put The Witcher 2. Because admittedly, it came out a little bit earlier on the PC, but 2012 was when I encountered it.
By the way, I think that would be a great line for a escort company, which is, let us service your self-esteem.
Okay.
The Why Can't I Skip the Cutscene award goes to Max Payne 3.
Oh. God damn it.
Why, have you thought of that one as well?
I put the GTA Tech Demo Award for Max Payne 3. And also the Multiplayer Balancing Award because it was awful. And for services to teaching you the game mechanics and then throwing them away in the final sequence award. So yeah, no, Max Payne 3 featured heavily for me, even though I'm not sure I enjoyed it all that much.
Okay, next up is the Most Pew Pew for Your Dollar award for PlanetSide 2.
Oh.
Interesting. Now, per dollar, is that because it's free to play unless you buy stuff, or what?
Yeah. This was a free-to-play game that came out towards the end of the year, but it gives you just massive battle opportunities for what is basically a free game.
I'm quite looking forward to the PS4 version of that. It seems like it might be quite cool.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that was in development.
Yeah, no, it's one of the free-to-play offerings that's coming out on the PS2, being a Sony online entertainment jobber. So yeah, looking forward to dipping in. The iBound Dust Particle Generator Awards go to The Walking Dead and a runner-up, I Am Alive, as well, for when, obviously you're not actually crying at playing a game, but something has got in your eye.
Why is it that, as men, we can't admit that we cry to a video game?
Oh, I admit it, but it seemed to be a kind of thing for players of The Walking Dead to, I don't know, to make up stories about dust particles. Yeah,
I think that's some weird internet thing. That is a bit odd. People just should say they cry. I refuse.
Everyone knows what you mean.
I know, but it's just it's like this kind of bandwagon that people jump onto. It's like when people were saying shiny after Firefly was released.
You can't necessarily admit that you're a man that's cried.
I cried.
I don't know. No, one game I did cry at was Lost Odyssey.
Lost Odyssey, yeah.
No, it had some very poignant writing at places. Although some of it got to the point where it was overly emotionally manipulative.
Yeah.
Best use of endangered animal hides goes to Far Cry 3.
I thought I would have had more awards for Far Cry 3, but I really didn't.
Best psycho tourist simulator?
Yeah, no, I had best game that destroyed your memories of the previous game in the franchise, whilst also making mass murder seem like a great form of tourism award.
Yes, I had worst African mercenary simulator.
Okay.
I also had Crackdown, and I'll buy it.
Yes.
When Crackdown was released, after you finished the main game, you could turn all the gangs back on, and you could drive around and kill them.
Yeah.
And they patched that into Far Cry 3. So as soon as that came along, that's when I bought it. Lupus?
Have you played it?
Have I played Far Cry 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I played it and finished it. We spent 2 hours talking about it on the show.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I remember it was my favourite show.
Wait, it also got the Ping Pong Bear Award, which really is, if Skeleton Frames was here, Ping Pong Bear and Platypus of the human world. Lupus.
Best Batman game not featuring Batman award goes to Mark of the Ninja.
Yes, interesting. Any thoughts on this sim?
I had the best use of gongs for Mark of the Ninja, but it was another game I just wanted to mention because it was a really neatly expedited stealth mechanic in what is essentially a 2D stealth 'em up, harking back to my gaming youth, really. Things like Saboteur on the Spectrum.
Oh, yes.
There were some cracking games. I mean, they really hit the nail on the head, I think, with Mark of the Ninja. It's really satisfying, and it's relatively simple, isn't it? I mean, there are lots of gadgets you can get, and maybe we're going back to that one button thing, but the mechanics of it are mechanisms in it are fairly simplistic.
Now, talking about Saboteur. Saboteur was a game released on the Spectrum, side-scrolling kind of... You played a ninja, didn't you? Was there a dog in it, or is that my imagination?
That may have been the sequel.
Okay.
Saboteur 2.
The loading screen of Saboteur was a ninja holding what looks like a flare and a kind of axe thing. And that is the front cover or the poster from a Sho Kosugi film. If you look him up, Sho Kosugi was kind of part of the ninja craze in films in the 80s. And Saboteur, if I can go back, how old is that now?
Oh, it's got to be 85, 86.
Shit.
So next year we're looking at that being 30 years ago.
Jesus Christ.
But we're not getting old.
Saboteur wins the Spoilt Child Award because I got it for my birthday. And I had these kids round and I had the Spectrum set up and I was playing it and I just said, I think I said something like, I wish you'd all go home so I could play the game. Which
the Mark of the Ninja, it's similar.
I think that was the defining social moment in my life. 8 years old or 9 years old, however it is, and I kind of say, I don't like human interaction. Please leave me alone with a computer. Who's next?
It's probably you.
Is it? The worst season pass award goes to Borderlands 2. Because this is the season pass where they said, season pass, get this stuff. And they go, here's some stuff that's not included. And then they released the Game of the Year edition. And I don't think even the Game of the Year edition has all the content in it.
They're not cheap, are they, season passes? And they're often the cost of the game again. So if you've bought into that early on, before that stuff's going to be released, it seems like not just penny pinching, but kind of a bit of a kick in the nads to your fans.
And it kind of validates the reason why we're doing the show like it is, why it is 6 months, and in fact it's now a year later, because you wouldn't have known that this would happen when Borderlands 2 was released.
No, there was no clue. Yeah, I kind of feel a bit guilty for not mentioning this earlier when we had Wub Wub, but I had the most disappointing Burnout Paradise follow-up for Forza Horizon. I'm still waiting for something open world and drivey, which was as friendly and cooperative and relaxing as Burnout Paradise. And despite, Criterion going to Need for Speed and all that kind of thing, and me thinking that Forza Horizon was going to have a similar kind of cooperative vibe, it wasn't like that at all.
The book with the last page torn out award goes to Mass Effect 3.
Oh,
that wasn't 2012, was it?
I think it's 2012, yeah. I didn't even play this. I was looking forward to playing it, and then I read, there's this plot point that's not resolved unless you pay 50 pence or something.
What were they called?
Not Protoss. What are Protoss? That's StarCraft.
From
StarCraft.
Yeah. Protean?
Yeah, it's something they've nicked from another game or a film. They're absolutely, completely, and totally extinct unless you pay, $10.
Yeah.
On the back of the FTL award for the only game that will still run on my PC, I've got the best game that reminded me that I'm secretly glad my PC can't run games anymore was Guardians of Middle-earth on the XBLA, which is a, what do they call them?
MOBA.
MOBA, yes.
Like League of Legends or...
Yeah. League of Legends and...
Dota and such, yeah.
Dota, yes. Dota 2 and all that kind of thing. Well, Guardians of Middle-earth is my only experience of it, and I really enjoyed it. But I realised that I was never going to be good enough to survive the kind of criticism I'd undertake if I played a game like that with people who knew what they were doing.
The final award that I have is the Death of Civilization award. Goes to XCOM, Enemy Unknown. because they started selling shortcuts through skill trees. What happened is, in XCOM Enemy Unknown, they released this DLC. It gave you a new character to play with. It gave you an option to acquire what in the standard game would be an end game weapon earlier, as long as you fulfill certain conditions, right? I didn't understand how the makers of Civilization could do this.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a bad thing to be able to pay for.
Yeah, I mean, and it's difficult, but I have to say I am weak. I have bought XCOM Enemy Within. It was 15 quid on Xbox Live.
That's a bargain.
Lupus.
That's a bargain.
They were basically offering a package that I felt was a better deal, and if you offer the package in the right way, I'll buy it.
Sure. I only didn't buy it because I missed the sale. Interestingly, during the same sale period, they had the original game only for £17. So you could buy the original game for £2 more than the version that included the original game and had all the DLC. It was special.
Yeah, I think if you have an infinite number of monkeys, eventually they'll come up with Microsoft pricing policy. So, Lupus, what's your final one?
Darkest tale told by forest animals goes to Dust.
Dust, an Elysian Tale, which I have on your recommendation, actually, Lupus, I bought in a sale.
Yeah, it's when you play a fox, don't you? The game for furries.
Yes.
I had a game on my list that I could not think of anything clever. Maybe you can help me.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Diablo 3.
The always offline award goes to Error 40. Was it Error 43?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I don't know. There were a few different ones. Because there was like the error that you couldn't get to the login server, and then there was the error that you couldn't get to the actual game server, and then, yeah, there's all sorts of different fun stuff.
And so we come to the end of another show with an abrupt but squeaky finish, which I hope that you enjoyed. In fact, I hope you enjoyed the whole thing. Now, before we started recording, I was under the impression that we had invented the kind of invent your own award thing, because one of the rules on the show is that we don't do anything if other people have got there first, which of course severely limits what we can do. But it turns out that I was mistaken, and actually some posters, I think, on the Edge forum had kind of done an invent an award before us, maybe in 2008 or so. So more power to them. I would like to think, though, that we are still the innovators, the crazy like a foxes, in having a show that is a year late, which, of course, in conventional terms means that nobody's looking for it on Google. It won't go viral. Nobody's going to search for it on YouTube. And pretty much everybody has forgotten about the games that you're talking about, which, in terms of trying to get clicks, is a terrible idea. But in terms of actually having an interesting discussion, I think we're willing to put up with that. Now, if you want to keep in touch with the show, the best way to do it is on Twitter. Search for HatchetJob. And we are also on iTunes. Search for HatchetJob. Anyway, once again, that's it from us. Thank you for listening. And remember, do your own research and draw your own conclusions.